When I was testing and reviewing the Canon EOS R6 Mark II several weeks ago, I realized that it was doing many things better than my R5, especially out in the field with new AF options, with the pre-burst and so on. On the other hand, one of the biggest advantages, if not the biggest for me and other photographers, is the resolution of the R5. You have 45 megapixels versus the 24 on the R6 Mark II. I think that often this resolution is not so important. If you don't print very large on a regular base, or if you don't crop the images like crazy, you will probably not need this resolution. Maybe you only need it once a year, twice a year, and then the upgrade price from an R6 Mark II to an R5 is quite steep, and as said before, you actually miss some features. So with more and more modern software technology that uses artificial intelligence, such as Topaz Gigapixel AI or Topaz Photo AI, I was wondering if it's actually still necessary to buy a high-resolution camera if you need this resolution only a couple of times in the year. So in this video I tested Gigapixel AI a bit more thoroughly with several pictures. I made side-by-side comparison between the R5 and the R6 Mark II and then applied Gigapixel AI to the R6 Mark II and wanted to see how good is the new resolution of these files, are there any artifacts. I want to show you the workflow in this video, the results, and then also discuss a bit the advantages and disadvantages of each approach. So let's start with a quick demonstration of Gigapixel AI. I have now opened Lightroom here, but the workflow is basically the same in Capture One or whichever software you're using. So here I have two pictures of a mallard that was swimming by, and the image on the left was taken with the R6 Mark II, so it has 24 megapixels. The one on the right with the R5, so it has 45 megapixels. And I need to say it's not exactly the same image. I needed to change the camera in between the two pictures so that the mallard moved a bit, but it's more or less in the same light. It was taken like, I don't know, 2 minutes apart from each other. The bird is more or less the same size in the frame, so the distance was more or less the same. So I think it should just give an idea of what I mean. And that's basically, if we zoom in this picture of the R6 Mark II and then in the one of the R5, we just see that the R5 resolves clearly more details, which was kind of expected. So now let's see what we can get with Gigapixel AI in terms of details. I do a right click, edit in, and then Gigapixel AI. Here it's important to note that I turned the sharpness, noise reduction and so off in Lightroom because I don't want to pre-process the image before upscaling. And then I choose TIFF file format for good quality, and I go with 16 bits file depth. This is kind of important that you have more latitude when editing the picture afterwards. I click on edit and this will open Gigapixel AI. So basically here I can on the top right select where I want to have the crop of the image or the preview of the image, and you can see up here that we can say how big we want to have the picture in the end. So if 2 times, 4 times, or how much. I have here just the preview size. I go to 200% that you guys on YouTube can see it a bit better. So right now I want to upscale with 2 size, making the picture twice as big. I can also set a specific width or height of the pixel, so this then would be in the units of pixel. And below you can choose the model, so now it's on low resolution. There's very different ones. And then you have some additional settings to suppress the noise in the image or remove some image blur, meaning also increasing the sharpness. I usually turn them off or put them to a very low value. I made best experiences with this, but you can try this a bit out for yourself. As you can see on the bottom right, the preview has been updated and we can clearly see the effect here. So the left is the original and on the right you have the preview of the algorithm applied, in this case the low res. And we see much more details in the right one, so I'm quite happy with the result actually. Nevertheless, I go here to this comparison view on the right, this tile icon, and now you can see it's loading the preview for every model. You can select which models you want here to have to preview. You can set the parameters of the model, And depending on your computer, this will just take a bit until all these previews are updated. So now the algorithms have been updated, and if you look closely, you can see some differences here. I don't like this art one. I think it doesn't resolve so much details here. It looks more like a normal sharpening. Here I have some kind of noise in the standard one. For this image at least, I prefer the low resolution. And if I'm happy with this, I can just click on it or go back to the normal view and then basically click apply. Then it will take a second to save the file and I will return to Lightroom afterwards. If we now have a look at the results, on the left you see the unedited version of the R6 Mark II, on the right the unedited one of the R5. Again, it was a real world example. I needed to change the camera bodies in between, so the position of the DAC moved slightly, but I think it's still more or less comparable, or at least we get an idea that the R5 just resolves much more details. Now, if we apply Gigapixel AI to the R6 Mark II image, in this case with this low resolution model or algorithm, you can see how much better the R6 Mark II image gets. We get much more details. The pixels, the individual ones, look smaller. It's a bit hard to describe, but there is more sharpness and you really see that the pixels are smaller, at least that's my impression. And on the positive side, I cannot see any artifacts here. Let me know in the comments if you spot any, but for me, it looks pretty good. And I would say it's actually quite close to the R5, so it managed very well to increase the resolution of the file. I was then wondering, but is Gigapixel AI or some fancy AI software needed for this, or could you just increase the sharpening slider in Lightroom and export with a higher image dimensions? And I was trying this as well, and as you can see, the Lightroom sharpening helps a bit to show more contrast, but I feel really that it looks just like doing that, increasing the contrast, but the pixels still stay quite big, and you don't really resolve more feather details in my opinion. Here, Gigapixel AI is doing a way better job. However, this is not the best comparison. As I said, it was a field test. So let's now move to a studio test. I have a small plush bat that I photographed. You can see the whole scene here. And here I did a one-to-one comparison between the R6 Mark II and the R5. So with the same lens, same focal length, same ISO, same shutter speed, exact same framing. And if we look at the original file on a crop here, you can see the same pattern as before, but maybe even a bit more pronounced, that the R5 is just resolving much more details, especially also around the eye in this artificial fur. So there is like no comparison. How does it look like if we run the R6 Mark II through Gigapixel? You can see there is a clear improvement over the original R6 Mark II image. One thing I should note here, I was actually not using the low-res algorithm, but the high quality. Just with this scene, it gave me better results, and I think this is something you will need to try for yourself. Maybe with mammals, one of the algorithm works generally better than the other. Maybe with birds, it's another one, or it just depends on the colors. Just figure this out. I mean, you have this overview that I showed before, so I think this needs a bit of time, but again, I don't think this is something you will do every day. And if we now compare this R6 Mark II image with Gigapixel on the left to the R5 image, the unedited one on the right, we can see that it's really doing pretty well. I mean, in my opinion, they look very comparable. I hardly see any artifacts, if any, on the R6 Mark II image that we ran through Gigapixel. I have the feeling the R5 looks a tiny bit more natural, but I would say that Gigapixel did a really good job here. And this would be, I think, a great case where if you have not enough resolution, you can just increase it. I was then wondering, can we get even more details out of the R5 image? So this time I put the R6 Mark II image to Gigapixel by scaling it up 4 times and scaling up the R5 image 2 times. On the left you can see the R6 Mark II image with the 4 times upscaling. On the right, the one with the R5 with the 2 times upscaling, Gigapixel AI. And you can see that for the R6 Mark II, there is not a big difference actually between upscaling 2 times or 4 times. And here with the R5, we see an improvement due to Gigapixel AI. I have the feeling it's not as pronounced as with the R6 Mark II because we already have a good resolution to begin with, but still it definitely improves the quality. So what are my conclusions? Is Gigapixel AI effectively replacing high resolution cameras? I think no, just because there is always the risk that it might introduce some artifacts, it might not work so well with some images, it's an extra effort and so on. So if you print large on a regular base, or you know that you will crop often because maybe you have a fixed lens, you cannot always put extender or take the extender out, and you want to have a bit this flexibility with cropping in post, then I think a higher resolution camera, in this scenario the R5, is still a better choice than a lower resolution camera and afterwards using Gigapixel AI. However, I think many people don't need this on a daily basis. So if you think you would use this scenario like 2, 3, maybe 5 times a year, that you really need to have the image bigger, then I think it might be worth to just get an R6 Mark II. You save quite some money, you get better features, and you can use Gigapixel AI with very good results. It might take a minute to run these files. You might need to check which algorithm works best. But hey, if you can save $1,000 or something by this, maybe it's worth it. So if you're curious, you can test Gigapixel AI for free for 30 days. I put a link below. It's an affiliate link. That means if you buy Gigapixel AI after, or the whole image quality bundle, I would get a small provision, but you don't pay any cent more, but it would just help me to do videos like this and also like the outdoor photography videos and more tutorials.